everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WOCReader, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my end of May wrap up. So towards the end of May, I did concentrate a lot of my time on finishing one particular book that has been on my TBR for a few months now, and that is Moco Magic, Arnival Chaos by Tracy Baptiste. So this is the first book in a new series. It's part of the Freedom Fire imprint over at Disney. I was gifted this copy by Disney in exchange for an honest review. I had not gotten to pick it up around the time because I was just reading so much stuff, but also it is quite thick, very long book, and it doesn't have an audiobook, which lately a lot of middle grade books have not have audiobooks, but some of them are very long. And I wish that more middle grade was getting audiobooks because it would just make it so much more accessible for these young readers who are on the go. Like sometimes it's just easier to consume the story audibly versus them wanting to sit down, because a lot of people get intimidated too when they have to sit down and read such a large book. And even for me, it took me a lot longer than I anticipated to sit down and read it. Now, I read Tracy Baptiste's other series, The Jumbies, like at this point I think it was about 10 years ago, because I remember picking it up and reading it with my cousin's daughter. Like we had started reading it together, and then I ended up like finishing it off on my own. And I loved it because like I had not seen like books like that about Caribbean mythology on the shelves. So it was very different, but it was also half the size of this one, which makes a difference. So in Moco Magic, we are following three cousins. One of them has recently moved from Trinidad and Tobago to Brooklyn. She's still getting acclimated to her new environment. Her father still lives in Trinidad. He hasn't gotten his visa yet to come over, which is a relatively common thing. Sometimes families do get split up while waiting for the paperwork to come through to come to the States. I know that happened in my dad's family. Like his mom went down before him, and then he was like back home with like an auntie or something in the meantime, and he came up here when he was like 18 or so. And so I thought that was an interesting aspect, to have this young child who has just moved and is getting acclimated to the culture. Like there's a lot of like words that they use all the time that once you get over here in America, you kind of start losing some of the language too, just because of the familiar words that you use are different from the ones that people here use. So like there's a lot of like words and stuff that we used to use back when I was a kid growing up in my family that we like don't use anymore, just because it doesn't make sense for like our everyday. But so there was like a lot here that I could relate to as far as from this big family, because back in the day too, like a lot of my Trinidadian family was around. People used to visit often, so like even though we didn't go as much, we always had people around us. I thought that whole aspect was very well done. These cousins find out that they have these special Moco powers that are passed through their family, and like once you reach adulthood, your powers start to fade as the next generation takes over. So like their parents all have had these powers too. They have the experience and they're trying to teach them, but they kept it from them to make sure that their powers actually manifested first, and to not put this additional pressure on them, because they are the protectors of their community. So things are going awry during the Labor Day parade and the celebrations leading up to it. That's kind of like Brooklyn Carnival. just things are going crazy. Brooklyn Carnival is a little controversial because people are always complaining about the crime and stuff and calling for cancellation of certain events. I never went to the parade because like sometimes stuff does pop off, and it's like a huge, like, busy environment. My dad used to live in Brooklyn for a little bit, so he went so many years, and we still have like family and family friends and stuff who live that way. It was interesting to see like all the different events leading up to the parade, like the ones for the Kitty Carnival and Juve, and like things are just going awry. There are these magical creatures called masks that are like popping up, wreaking havoc, and the cousins are going around trying to save them. And there's like this big, like, evil creature that has manifested that they're not sure how to defeat. So I thought this was a really, like, well done story. I liked all the effort that was put in to tie in Caribbean mythology. The only thing I will say is that it was too lengthy. Like, specifically towards the middle, it gets a little harder to push through, and I slowed down my reading during the middle because I felt like some parts of it were very repetitive. I do love the overall message, though, of the story, protecting our stories and culture. I actually have a quote that I had highlighted just because it just felt like so fitting. I'm trying to pull that up now. Carnival is about joy when you are surrounded by despair, making something bright and beautiful out of scraps of nothing, like an instrument out of an oil drum and a costume out of garbage. And I thought that was very significant because if you know anything about the history of Carnival, it started out as this celebration with the black, like, enslaved people. They were like mocking the fancy parties that the rich white people had, and like, so they didn't have anything and they made it into something. But there's been a lot of conversation the past few years about how Carnival is now like a rich people's game. The wealthiest in the country are the main participants. The costumes are getting more and more expensive. Like, they just be flat out listing prices in USD, and it is high. Like, easily spending thousands on thousands of dollars to be able to participate in these celebrations that really started from nothing. And there are people who make their whole living just going from country to country celebrating Carnival. So it's this huge moneymaker, and people have been talking about like a lot of the mythology and stuff that surrounds Carnival is getting lost. So this book makes a great point to talk about sharing our history to the next generation so that these stories aren't forgotten. They said, like, the monster stops growing after nobody talks about it anymore. So I found that really well done. I really would love to see an audiobook for this one. I know it's been almost like a year, not quite, but getting close up there to when this was released. Disney, put out an audiobook. This is Hairology Volume 1. This was a comic book collection that I actually had done the Kickstarter for. I thought it was unique. There were a lot of different black comic book artists that were involved, and I wanted to show support. And then I got it, and then I just kind of left it on my shelf for the longest, not reading it, just having it sit and be pretty. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna finally pick it up and read it. And I did, and there's just varying like stories from artists of all backgrounds talking about their relationship to hair and their overall looks and how that affected their life and self-esteem. So I thought that was pretty interesting. There's some really like great panels in here. I love the art. There were even a few stories where I was just like, they could expand on this and do a little something. Like, I like this one and this like magical hair salon. So overall, I like enjoyed reading this. This was a very quick read since these are all short comics. And I definitely want to check out some more of the artist's work in here. I finally read We Are the Crisis by Cadwell Turnbull. This is the sequel to No Gods, No Monsters. There's a third book coming out later this year. I had received this arc a couple of years ago. They had just like sent it to me because I read the first book, but then I was reading a lot of stuff, and this was 2023. My fall of 2023 was a hot mess, so I just did not have the capacity to sit down and read this one because it is very literary. So it is one that requires a lot of your attention. I would say this sequel leans more like as like fantasy than like as heavy literary as the first book did. So that was an interesting change. This is 3 years after the events of the first book, known as the Boston Massacre, where the world found out that these monsters actually exist. So since then, people have been trying to cope with that. You have people who are turning to sci-fi and fantasy books for all the answers. You have the werewolves kind of like teaming up in their own pack to stay together, and them running an activist group to try and get people more on board with their humanity. You have a hate group that is trying to take them out. And then you have some secret underground societies in the mix. So this was just like action packed. There was like so much stuff going on throughout. Definitely like will keep you on your toes. I kind of want to reread it again because I just feel like so much was like coming at me. I didn't get the full effect of it all. But I'm interested in seeing how things wrap up here. I read Miss V's Hot Girl Summer by H. Cunningham, and it was a pretty interesting romance. I liked the carnival aspect of it just because you really don't see books set around Caribbean carnivals. And this one follows Trinidad Velasquez, aka Miss V, and she is mother to teenage twin boys. Their father is not as involved as she wants him to be. He really has not been stepping up and doing his part. So they have this older mentor named Orlando, who's in his 20s, I believe. He mentors them. He's trying to teach them what it means to be men. At first I did find it a little bit heavy-handed, like as far as like what he was trying to teach him. Like you have to make sure, like there was a lot of like therapy speak in there and stuff too that was just a little bit off for me. I felt like we were just putting a lot on these teen boys to make sure, like, you know, they are the strong, upstanding like men in society, and I feel like we don't put those same pressures on teenage white boys. So like that just felt a little heavy-handed at first. Miss V has like no love life right now. She really is concentrating on being the best mother she can be at the detriment of herself. So she's dating this man who is like the safe option she thinks will be a great father to her sons in the future. And her boys, they want her to go out and have fun. So they trick her into thinking that there's this cheerleading competition happening when really it was all a ploy to get her to go to this carnival in this smaller Florida town. Orlando is also down there for the carnival, which they already knew from talking to him. And their whole goal was to get him to take her into his villa where he's staying at. He is also partially down there because his ex-girlfriend, he found out, had a child by him, and so he's looking for this daughter of his while also going to these various events. So Miss V lets loose. You know, everybody has kind of noticed the chemistry between her and Orlando, and they have a good fun time at Carnival. Like, if you are familiar with the culture, it was pretty fun to see that stuff play out on page. I think it was like a very cute vacation romance vibe. I thought that they had good chemistry, but I don't necessarily see them sticking together long term. For one, Orlando is supposed to also be looking for this daughter. I feel like the daughter plot took a backseat and then only came in towards like the end. And that part was wrapped up a little tight. I would have loved to see how they navigate like being a couple with her twin boys and then Orlando being this new father trying to balance time with his daughter. They don't even live in the same like state. So that was very interesting. And there, like, sometimes it was a little awkward at first because he would be into like more childish things. Like there was a Miles Morales comic mentioned during one of the sex scenes where I was just like, didn't need that. And like at first she's like referring to him like as if he's like a boy and stuff. I just felt like we didn't need to do that. Like he's still a grown man at the end of the day. But it was pretty interesting. I would have just loved a little bit more depth there. But I will check out H. Cunningham's next book. I also read Takes One to Know One by Lisette Dacos. This one is another type of vacation romance story. So we are following a woman who works for a record company, and she has to go to Puerto Rico to work on this popular reggaeton artist's new project, and he really doesn't want to let them get in and get the footage that they need to create this story that's supposed to generate hype for his project. They kind of want to do like a making of where they're doing like various interviews throughout of him while he's making the album and his process. This one I feel like needed a second POV. We needed to get the POV of the artist. His name is Renee, which felt way too close to Benny for me, which like Benny being Bad Bunny. I thought like it was interesting in that we were exploring this woman's grief. Like her father died, she's the eldest daughter, she feels like she needs to take care of the family. She's never actually been to Puerto Rico, even though her father is from Puerto Rico. So she was experiencing the country for the first time, and there's all those emotions there, which I found pretty relatable. But at the same time, we spent most of this romance not even in a romantic position. It's not till like around after the 60% mark where we start really going towards like a romance. Before that, she's just like dealing with this artist and him not wanting to cooperate with her, and then he has like these different women around, like this friend who clearly had something going on with him prior, which that alone like kind of threw off the dynamics of the book. I don't feel like the couple here had a lot of chemistry together. So this could have just been like a woman's fiction about this woman discovering herself. We really did not need the romance because the romance was not great. And I started like getting uninterested towards the end when they finally did try to piece this romance together, because it didn't flow well for me. It didn't fit. Like I said, they didn't really have too much chemistry there, and we never got to like really see like the true him. So that's the book that I ended the month off with. I think I will try something else from this author though, just to see, because I think her other book was like very like well praised and stuff. But this one, it unfortunately, it didn't deliver where I wanted it to. So that was everything that I read at the end of May. Like I said, I spent a lot of time just reading Moco Magic. Let me know if any of these books were interesting or ones that you were interested in, or like have you read any of them? If you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!